Mrs. Evangeline Crowe's sinister garden. 7 maids vanished, unexplainable blood roses revealed. Laura Bennett could feel the weight of Maplewood Hollow pressing down on her like a thick fog. Shadows crept through the decaying suburb, whispering rumors of dread. 7 maids had vanished without a trace. The unsettling disappearance of women who once laughed and sang in every home now left emptiness and silence. Murmurs about Mrs. Evangeline Crowe, the widow with an unfathomable gaze and a garden alive with blood-red roses, sent shivers down Laura's spine. It wasn't just gossip. It felt like something sinister was wrapping its hands around the very heart of their community. Every evening, after long hours at the school, Laura returned home, her footsteps echoing down desolate streets. Familiarity had turned hollow as the neighborhood started weaving tales of horror. The once friendly greetings felt heavy now, fraught with secrecy. The last time she saw Clara, the maid from 2 houses down, was only a few nights ago. Laura's chest tightened as she recalled Clara's haunted eyes, a fleeting panic echoing in the depth of her voice. Be careful, Laura watched the shadows. As Laura traversed the ominous path to her home after those encounters, the whispering wind clawed at her thoughts, urging her to ignore the warnings. But Mrs. Crowe was always there, lurking at the edge of her vision. An unsettling feeling twisted inside her, a mixture of dread and unsettling fascination. What was hidden among the twisted trunks and the lush, perilous blooms? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension in Maplewood Hollow grew like the oppressive summer heat. The air turned thick with uncertainty, and Laura felt the walls of her home closing in on her. One night, the moon shone brighter than ever, illuminating the way to Mrs. Crowe's garden. The intoxicating scent of roses drew Laura in as if they were alive and beckoning for her presence. She could hear their soft, almost hypnotic whispers as she cautioned herself against leaving the safe confines of the pavement. Among the swaying thorns, Laura stumbled upon a tarnished charm. It bore a striking resemblance to one belonging to Clara, half buried in the damp earth. Panic surged through her, fresh as cold sweat trickling down her back. The oppressive scent of the roses went from inviting to suffocating. She realized in horror that the garden itself felt sentient, watching every move with a hunger she wished she didn't understand. The vanishing of her neighbors and the chilling aura surrounding Mrs. Crowe couldn't be coincidences. Could they? As the chilling weight of that thought settled in, Laura glanced around, a sense of impending doom crashing over her. The garden seemed to pulse in the night, growing darker and more foreboding with each breath she took. What had she uncovered? And worse, would she become just another name that slipped into the whispers among the lingering shadows of Maplewood Hollow? Laura stumbled back, her heart hammering in her chest. The charm clutched tightly in her trembling hand felt like a weight pulling her deeper into Mrs. Crowe's sinister web. She studied the rose garden, now alive with shadows that seemed to stretch and contract as if breathing. A cold breeze whispered past her, wrapping around her like icy fingers. "What have I done?" she muttered to herself, stepping away from the garden's edge, the illustrious blooms now taking on a menacing aspect. Every rose appeared to be leaning toward her, thirsting for something she couldn't quite name. Fearing she'd linger too long, she turned on her heel and bolted down the path leading back to the safety of her home. Each step echoed in her ears, but the silence behind her felt more potent. Was someone or something following her? The paranoia made her skin crawl. She glanced back at the garden. It loomed larger, its thorns now jagged and hungry against the moonlit sky. Laura quickened her pace, fists clenched around Clara's charm, willing herself to forget the lingering whispers of the roses. That night, sleep eluded her. Shadows danced across her walls, mocking her thoughts. She couldn't shake Clara's warning. Each creak of the floorboards made her heart race. Every gust of wind rattling the window felt like a ghostly sigh, a reminder of the 7 women who had disappeared. Were they lost to Mrs. Crowe's garden? Had her curiosity led her into the very snare they had fallen into? The next day, she gathered herself enough to visit the local library, hoping to uncover anything that might provide an explanation. Old newspapers, yellowing and brittle, lay indexed in dusty stacks. Laura combed through page after page, her pulse quickening as stories of the vanished maids emerged. Their faces stared back at her from faded photographs, smiles wiped away by the hands of fate. The reporting grew increasingly dire, the language thick with dread. Rumors circulated about the blood roses, how they thrived only in areas where tragedy had struck. Laura's stomach twisted. Right above the article about Clara's disappearance, she found another clipping. It mentioned a prior owner of the property where the roses now bloomed, a gardener known for individualizing his plants through dark rituals that were said to bind the soul. A cold wave of realization crashed over her. What had Mrs. Crowe done? Was she simply tending to the garden? Or was she the haunting presence everyone feared? Laura's gaze drifted back to the photograph of Clara, her eyes wide with fright. The longer she stayed engrossed in the past, the stronger the feeling of urgency gnawed at her. She couldn't just read about the lost women, she had to act. When she stepped outside, the sun hung low, casting long shadows across Maplewood Hollow. Glancing towards Mrs. Crowe's garden, she felt a familiar pull. Evangeline was at her window watching. Laura hesitated, then crossed the street without a second thought, driven by a sense of responsibility. The closer she got, the thicker the air became, saturated with a sweet, metallic scent. It urged her onward, a siren call she couldn't ignore. She needed answers, but at what cost? The garden felt alive, a predator waiting in the bushes. Laura stopped at the gate, her heart racing with uncertainty. What awaited her inside wasn't just the truth but possibly her fate. She opened the gate. A chill ran down her spine. The roses swayed, whispering secrets meant only for her. Every petal seemed to beckon her inward. What had she unleashed? Before she could turn back, the garden shifted, shadows morphing into shapes. An overwhelming sound erupted, an unholy chorus of sorrow. Would she too become a part of the garden, forever ensnared in Mrs. Crowe's desperate longing? The air became electric, tangling her senses. The garden stirred, and in that haunting moment, Laura realized one truth: she was no longer alone. The shadows moved closer, and she felt her body respond with an instinctual dread. The hungry roses awaited her next move. Would she find a way out, or would she be drawn into their crimson embrace? Suddenly, a voice broke through the chaos, echoing from the garden. Help us! That single plea hung in the air like a death knell. With time running out, Laura took a deep breath and stepped forward. What lay ahead could claim her or set her free. She had to decide before it was too late. The moment Laura stepped inside, the world shifted. The gate creaked ominously behind her, sealing off the safety of Maplewood Hollow. She stood in the garden, vines twisting around her ankles, tugging her deeper. The air was thick, laced with a cloying sweetness that turned her stomach. The roses towered over her, blood-red petals glistening under the dim light. Their aroma filled her head, blurring her thoughts with a heady intoxication. Help us! The voice echoed again, a haunting melody that danced around her. Instinctively, she reached for Clara's charm, but it felt hot against her skin, pulsing as if alive. Panic surged within her. Was she truly meant to be here, or had curiosity led her to this impending doom? Each breath felt like a mistake as she took another step forward. The shadows shifted, coiling around her legs. You shouldn't have come. Another whisper frightened her. It sounded familiar. She searched the dark, heart racing, every instinct screaming to turn back. Who's there? Laura called out, her voice trembling. No answer, just a rustling in the roses, as if they were laughing at her. She spotted a figure moving among the blooms. A face materialized from the petals, ethereal, pale, and tormented. It was one of the missing maids, Clara. Her eyes, filled with sorrow, bore into Laura's soul. "Help us, you must help us." Her words cracked like broken glass. "Clara, what happened to you?" The question slipped from Laura's lips, ridden with dread. She felt the weight of those missing souls pressing down on her. The ground beneath her feet felt alive, vibrating with unfulfilled hope. Maybe she could save them. Panic reared as reality dawned. The thorns extended, reaching for her. Faces twisted in agony flickered within the petals, their expressions pleading for rescue. They were trapped, just as the stories had warned. "Run." Clara's voice pierced through the whispers. "You have to leave. Don't become one of them." But something else stirred within her, a morbid curiosity fueled by desperation. What if she could break the curse binding them? What if she could free the lost souls? As she stood frozen, half-heartedly torn between escape and the urge to help, the garden pulsated. Vines tightened around her ankles, anchoring her in place. She fought against them, but it felt like wading through molasses. The darkness swirled, pulling her deeper. With every ounce of strength, she yanked free, instinctively following Clara's shadowy figure deeper into the tangle of roses. They brushed against her skin, drawing blood. The more she resisted, the more the garden craved her. "Don't let them take you." Clara's voice echoed through the labyrinth of blooms. "You have to." The words faded. The voice vanished, replaced by an overpowering roar of sorrow that filled the air. Dark tendrils of plants closed in around her, suffocating. She was suffocating. "Help us," the whispers came again. Now a cacophony of suffering, a haunting blend of desperation and despair. Laura looked around, her heart racing with terror. The garden seemed to pulse with life, alive with intentions she couldn't grasp. The roses began to pull her in, strong and hungry. The shadows closed tight, urging her to surrender to the madness of the garden. "Laura!" A new voice yelled, cutting through the shrouded chaos. It was Evangeline, standing tall among the roses, a malevolent smile curling on her lips. "Welcome, dear. Your fate is intertwined with theirs now." A frozen terror coursed through Laura as Evangeline took a step toward her, the shadows twisting in anticipation. The garden was waiting, and so was the darkness that craved her surrender. Would she give in, or could she muster the will to escape before it was too late? Laura's pulse raced, the air heavy with dread. Now she had to choose, fight or succumb. Then, from the shadows, rose a chorus of voices, resonating with haunting clarity. "Join us." In that moment, Laura realized she had entered a battle far greater than she could comprehend. What was about to unfold could redefine her very essence. The garden hungered. Time was running out. The garden closed in, the air electric with tension. Laura's heart thundered in her chest, each beat an urgent plea for survival. Evangeline's figure loomed closer, her smile not one of warmth, but of something much darker, a hunger for despair. "Don't resist," Evangeline purred, her voice silky smooth, blending effortlessly with the rustle of the roses. "You'll find it easier to join them." Laura's instincts screamed at her to run. But where? The labyrinth stretched endlessly, twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. The roses, with their mysterious allure, seemed to mock her with every step she hesitated to take. Shivers ran down her spine as she glanced at Clara's face, which faded back into the shadows. What had she done? She wrestled with the pulsing vines clinging to her legs, their grip tightening as if the garden itself fed off her fear. "No!" she yelled, her voice straining. "I want to become one of you." But her defiance only spurred the garden, causing it to writhe and hiss, the soft rustling rising to a crescendo. "Join us," they chanted, voices spiraling in a spiraling crescendo that reverberated through her mind. A cacophony of sorrow and hope tangled together until they merged into one chaos. Evangeline's eyes glinted with malicious delight. "You think you can fight fate? The garden chooses its own, and it wants you. All of you." She stretched her arms, as if embracing the shadows that danced around her. Each time Laura pulled away, the shadows coiled tighter. She could feel her will slowly eroding, like sand slipping through her fingers. The heat of Clara's charm burned against her skin, a desperate warning that she failed to heed. Would this place claim her as it had the others? Help us. Clara's voice echoed in the corners of Laura's mind, taunting her with the weight of responsibility. Finding her resolve, Laura took a step back. No, I won't let you take me. But holding onto that sense of agency felt increasingly futile. She turned, desperate to find a path through the roses, the thorns reaching hungrily for her flesh. Stop! Evangeline shouted, her tone sharp, slicing through the hysteria like a knife. You will stay whether you want to or not. The vines sensed her resolve and unleashed a surge of energy that threw her to the ground. The roses bunched closer, their petals shimmering ominously, waiting to envelop her entirely. Panic exploded in her veins as she gasped for breath, feeling the garden surge against her. A flash of clarity swept over her. She couldn't just run. She needed to confront the truth that hovered just out of reach. Why did the garden desire her? What held this new connection? Summoning her last ounce of strength, Laura grasped the charm tighter, visualizing Clara's face. I will free you, she screamed, willing the energy around her to change. She grasped at hope, the desperation igniting a fire within her. Everything went still for a moment, and perhaps the garden paused too, confused by her defiance. Then, in the stillness, a low rumble shook the ground. The shadows drew back, recoiling as if stung. Foolish girl, Evangeline hissed, her smile twisting in irritation. You cannot save them all. This is just the beginning. With a burst of clarity, Laura realized there was another way, or perhaps a darker truth awaited her. The air hung heavy as dread crept back, the gardeness' hunger intensifying. Who would pay the price for her defiance? Just then, from the depths of the surrounding darkness, a new voice emerged, ancient and commanding. A whisper that both terrified and intrigued her. Choose wisely, Laura. Bind yourself to the blood roses, or become their prey. Laura's pulse quickened, not just with fear, but with the undeniable sense that the next choice she made could tilt the very balance of life in this cursed garden. And in that moment of uncertainty, she drew a shallow breath, poised at the edge of a revelation. What secrets lay hidden among the thorns, waiting to be unearthed? As the vines coiled tighter around her, Laura realized the horror was far from over. The whispers morphed into a chorus, a symphony of entreaties and shrieks that twisted through Laura's mind like a serpent. It felt impossible to distinguish her own thoughts from the cacophony, drowning her in doubt and fear. Every heartbeat echoed with the relentless words of the garden, forming an almost tangible pressure against her chest. Choice, the new voice murmured, its tones steely and cold. A choice must be made. Laura sank deeper into the earth, the ground pulsing beneath her like a living creature. The shadows hung thick in the air, heavy and suffocating, wrapping around her like a shroud. She struggled against the binding vines, but they were relentless, almost sentient, relishing in her panic. Evangeline, she gasped, desperation clawing at her throat. What do you want from me? I'll never join you. The defiance tasted bitter, but it fueled her will to fight. Evangeline's gaze flickered with amusement, her lips curling into a wicked smirk. Oh, but darling, it's not entirely about me. You're already part of this game. She waved a hand, and a rustle swept through the roses, making them tremble. You can feel it too, can't you? The garden hungers for your touch. You are destined to make it yours. Just embrace it. Make it mine? Laura repeated, incredulous, her voice wavering. You mean to control it? To bind myself to this place? Exactly. Evangeline stepped closer, her presence all-consuming. Embrace the darkness, and you can save Clara. Save yourself. Just look deeper, dear Laura. What lurks within the roses holds power enough to grant you strength beyond imagination. Strength? She scoffed, unwilling to betray her humanity. What strength comes with darkness? I'll risk losing myself. Risk? Evangeline hissed, her eyes narrowing, glinting with otherworldly light. You've already lost. Just accept it. But Laura's pulse quickened, visceral adrenaline surging through her. No, I will not give in. Yet the garden pulsed in agreement, the ground around her shifting. With each defiant thought, Tendrils of shadows encroached ever closer, curling over her arms and shoulders, drawing her deeper into despair. The roses writhed expectantly, their crimson petals glistening like blood, a promise of pain and pleasure intertwined. "Look into the heart of the garden, Laura," the ancient voice whispered again, softer now, yet dripping with menace. "Find the truth buried among the thorns." Then everything exploded into chaos. Colors struck like lightning, flashes of blood-red thorns and dark shadows. The gasping shadows filled her vision, and Laura felt her stomach twist. Images danced at the edge of her consciousness, claws of despair tearing through the fabric of reality. Screaming faces, whispers of lost souls, all twisting into a chaotic ballet. "No!" she screamed into the maelstrom. Her voice trembled, fear fighting against the swell of darkness. She needed clarity amidst the storm. Her eyes darted, searching for Clara, for something, anything to pull her out of this terror. The longing surged within her again, mixed with a yearning to understand the truth of this garden-esque dark promise. Had Clara chosen to stay? Could she find a way to turn this dread to her advantage? The perfect creation of life down here among the roses, if they could shape her fate, could they not also reshape who she was destined to be? Just as the shadows lurked behind her, desperate to claim her, an image struck her. A small, ancient key, glimmering faintly in the dying light. "The key," she gasped. "I can find it." The vines strained against her resolve, but she refused to yield. She could feel its power calling to her, promising safety but also danger. What remnants of herself would she unleash if she took that path? "Find the key and you'll unlock your potential, or remain here and perish." The voice closed around her like a tight embrace, leaving her breathless, caught between two worlds. Laura's heart raced, her thoughts racing faster than her breathing. What would it cost? What other horrors might I awaken? The air around her thickened even more as the garden-esque choice loomed large, pressing in on all sides. A terrible question hung in the silence. What would she sacrifice for survival? As she stood at the brink of revelation, the thorns twitched, eager for her next move. The key was out there. Was the risk worth it? With one last determined breath, Laura plunged into the heart of the garden, shrouded in shadows and despair, ready to face whatever hideous truths awaited her. But what new horrors lay ahead? And would she be strong enough to endure them? Laura stumbled forward, fueled by desperation and a flickering hope. The shadows swirled around her like a living fog, distorting the very landscape. It was a maddening sight, a blend of roses twisted with an unsettling elegance that threatened to ensnare her very soul. The air was thick with the scent of decay, blooming crimson petals hovering ominously like vultures, waiting for a moment of vulnerability. "Where is it?" she murmured, her voice barely a whisper against the weight of the impending dread. The garden seemed alive, sensing her urgency, its breath heavy with anticipation. The deeper she ventured, the louder the whispers grew, vibrating with a familiar, eerie cadence. That a glint caught her eye there, a flash of silver, reflecting what little light penetrated the suffocating canopy. The key, the very object of her quest, shone like a beacon amidst the chaos. She rushed toward it, her heart pounding like a war drum, each step sending jolts of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. But the ground shifted beneath her feet. The thorns writhed, eager to protect their secrets, their jagged leaves reaching out, slashing at her legs. She let out a gasp, struggling to maintain her balance as pain licked at her skin. "No, I want T back down," she screamed, pushing through the panic, inching closer to the key that shimmered like a beacon amidst the darkness. Finally, she closed her fingers around the cold metal. It was heavier than she expected, as if it bore the weight of all the souls that had come before her. "What do you want from me?" she cried, feeling the heat of panic wash over her. "What's the price?" A low, ghostly laughter echoed through the garden, reverberating through her bones. "You found the key," Evangeline's voice taunted. "But do you dare to use it? Are you ready to face the darkness within?" Laura's breath quickened. Face the darkness? Did Evangeline understand that the darkness was already consuming her? She clutched the key closer, its cold surface grounding her amidst the chaos. She needed to uncover the truth. The laughter twisted into shrieks, voices overlapping like a dissonant symphony. Choose wisely, Laura, or you may join the others. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of potential doom. Each breath she took echoed the weight of her choices, and all around her, the garden hummed with sinister life. The roses seemed to leer at her, petals unfurling like wicked smiles, inviting her to explore their depths. What horrors lurk among you? She whispered, her heart hammering. Suddenly, the earth trembled again, and dark roots burst forth, twining around her legs, pulling her deeper into the heart of the garden. She gritted her teeth in defiance, twisting the key in her palm. It felt like a heartbeat, alive and throbbing, a heartbeat that belonged to the garden itself. Could she still turn the tide of this nightmare? Had she found the power to save Clara or face the very darkness she feared? With every ounce of strength, she yanked the key free and brandished it like a sword. "Tell me what I need to do," she shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos as she prepared herself to confront whatever awaited her. Then silence. An astute, pulse-pounding silence that felt ancient and surreal. The garden held its breath, waiting, watching. Laura's skin prickled, and a new sensation coursed through her, a connection that made every hair on her body stand on end. The ground wanted her. The shadows craved her light. "What if I become one of them?" she pleaded, a voice of genuine fear slipping between her lips. Before she could regain her footing, a figure erupted from the thorns. The garden heaved, and the roses quivered, revealing Clara bleeding, battered, but alive, her eyes wide with terror. "Laura," she cried, reaching out a trembling hand. "You have to run." But the rest of her warning was drowned in a cacophony of shrieks and wails as tendrils lunged. Laura froze, heart seized by dread. What had she unleashed? As darkness closed in, trapping them both in its sinister caress, waiting to orchestrate their fate, one question hung in the air. Would they survive the choices now set before them? The world spun into chaos as the tendrils lunged, snaking through the air like serpents hungry for flesh. Clara's voice faded, swallowed by the cacophony that surrounded them, but panic tightened its grip on Laura's heart. She could see Clara's face, twisted in fear. Desperate, she felt the key burn against her palm, urging her to act, to decide. "Clara, hold on," Laura shouted, her voice straining against the encroaching shrieks. She thrust the key forward, every muscle in her body coiling with the instinct to protect. But as the tendrils danced closer, pulsing with dark intent, a terrifying realization struck her. The key was more than an object. It was a pact, a promise, and she could feel the garden's hunger, its insatiable desire to consume. Clara's terrified eyes were locked on Laura. "Please, we can't stay here," feeds on fear. With a surge of determination, Laura pressed the key into the ground, the metallic edge biting into the soil. The whispers surged. They became a tidal wave, drowning out everything else. She gritted her teeth, drawing from every ounce of courage. "Show us the way out. Just please, let us go." The ground trembled as roots twisted and writhed, the garden responding to her command. The roses hissed, their petals curling back, revealing the blackened centers. Visions of those who had come before her danced in her mind, faces frozen in terror. Lost souls who had wandered the garden, never to return. Laura's resolve wavered. "What if I become like them?" She staggered back, heart racing. But Clara's hand wrapped around her wrist, grounding her. "Focus on me, Laura. You've got the key. Don't let it take you down." Clara's grip was fierce, steadying the chaos inside Laura. And with that, clarity surged through her. The darkness pulsed and shrieked, demanding to be fed. "We're not your victims. We refuse," she screamed, her voice breaking through the din. The ground shuddered violently in response, and the flowers twisted in a frenzy, a cyclone of thorns and petals. The colors blazed like a nightmare, vibrant yet sinister, as if the garden was reacting to her defiance. The air crackled. Everything seemed to stop for a heartbeat. A single rose, larger than the rest, burst open. A gaping maw of darkness lined with sharp, glistening teeth. It exuded a sweet scent, intoxicating and sickening. "Do not engage the darkness, Laura," Clara shouted over the growing roar. It will, but Clara's warning came too late. The rose shot forth black tendrils, wrapping around Clara's waist, pulling her back into the heart of the garden. A deafening roar emerged from the depths, drowning out their screams. "No!" The word tore from Laura's throat as she lunged forward, desperately trying to grasp Clara's hand. But the darkness snared Clara tighter, the thorns digging into her skin, blood oozing as she cried out in anguish. And a flash of realization. Laura knew the price. The key would not only unlock pathways, it demanded a sacrifice. The garden sought to feed on their hopes and fears, weaving them into its twisted roots. The key vibrated violently in her hand. Should she use it? Should she stand and fight or plunge deeper into the chaos to save Clara? She felt both choices weighing heavy, dark tendrils creeping around her mind, whispering sweetly of surrender. "Laura!" Clara screamed, struggling against the inexorable pull. "Don't let it take you." And then there was only the echo of her heartbeat, mingling with the garden's dark lullaby. As Laura's breath hitched, the space around her erupted with horror, every thorn, every petal beckoning with feverish intent. The shadows lunged, entrapping her in their thrall as the key pulsed ominously, waiting for her command. Would she sacrifice everything to save her friend? Or would she let the darkness swallow them both whole? The choice felt impossibly heavy as the tendrils closed in, leaving her no escape. In that moment, the garden held its breath once more, readying itself for the final decision. What darkness had she awakened? And what horrors lay in wait behind the twisted beauty? The key throbbed in Laura's hand, a heartbeat of its own, pulling her in two different directions at once. Clara's screams grew muffled, drowning in the fury of the garden. Every inch of Laura's instinct screamed to save Clara, but fear twisted her gut, urging her to retreat. But Clara's eyes never left her. "Laura, please." The plea was raw, laced with desperation. That was all it took. Laura felt a surge of strength rise within her, born from love, loyalty, and fury at the garden's wickedness. "Let her go," Laura shouted, wielding the key like a sword, facing the raging darkness. The garden writhed in response, a creature furious at being challenged. The air thickened, the scent of rotting flowers swirling, choking her breath. The key surged again, warmth coursing through her veins, and suddenly, she was managing the panic. She plunged the key deeper into the soil, harnessing its energy. "Reveal your secrets," she bellowed, and the garden trembled as if in shock. The roots recoiled, parting in a grotesque display, revealing an elaborate pathway woven from thorns and petals, glistening with Clara's blood. Each drop seemed to awaken the soil, thrumming like a pulse beneath her feet. "Clara, run," Laura commanded, and despite the saturation of terror around them, she hoped her voice would be strong enough to cut through the nightmare. But Clara was immobilized, the tendrils tightening. "I can't. It won't let me." Her face blanched, tears glimmering in the chaos. Laura knew then. The garden fed on despair, and each desperate pulse of the darkness made Clara's fear grow. It was a trap, a void that sought to consume their very essence. "Fight it," Laura shouted, urgency fueling her words. "Don't let it take you." Clara's expression shifted. Gritting her teeth, she took a deep breath, determination igniting hope behind her fearful eyes. In that moment, Laura released the key from the soil and lunged towards Clara, desperation surging. She grabbed Clara's hand with fierce strength, tugging at the thorns that had sunk into Clara's skin. The tendrils screamed, a chorus of rage that echoed with the complaints of the garden, rattling the very ground beneath them. "Let her go." Laura pierced the din, tightening her grip on the key as if it might explode with power. Suddenly, the garden erupted in a cacophony of sound. The roses howled, shaking violently as if caught in a tempest. The very petals seemed to writhe with life, churning and lashing out at Laura. The key trembled, pulsing again, revealing visions faces of those lost before her. Images of horrors from weeks past. Their eyes now wide with despair as they swirled around the two friends. Laura felt their energy, their fear, offering it to the garden, a buffet for its insatiable appetite. Laura, it's too much, Clara cried out as shadows clung to her, whispering sweetly of surrender. No, Laura cried out, her heart racing, thundering in her ears. Then she saw it, the knowledge hidden within the gardeness heart, slipped from the whispers of the damned. She hurled the key into the ground hard enough to crack the soil. This is ours. The force emitted a shockwave that rippled through the roots, the colors shifting and darkening as the garden howled in protest. In that instant, the connection thrummed, and she felt the energy exchange, the key now pulling them both forward. They were not victims. They were powerful. But even as she felt the tide turn, Laura's grip on Clara began to falter. The darkness was cunning. It sought to infiltrate her mind, shoving images of failure, loss, and despair right to her core. Clara, hold on. The frantic plea slipped free as a tendril looped around her ankle, dragging her closer to the sinuous grasp of the lurking shadows. Just when it seemed the night would swallow them whole, the ground shook violently, splitting. Laura felt the rattle of power beneath her feet. The gardeness roar rose to an unbearable crescendo. What was coming? What lay beneath the soil that the key had unearthed? Before Laura could comprehend it, the earth ruptured, releasing a storm of dark vines that snaked upward, leaving Laura gasping in shock, and then a terrible silence fell. In its wake, a silhouette emerged, rising from the dark maw of the earth. The figure loomed larger than life, shrouded in shadows, with eyes ablaze, promising an unimaginable horror that would challenge every fear Laura had ever known. Is this what you were truly seeking? The voice echoed, deep and chilling. The tendrils flexed around them, their intention undeniable. No longer was it a question of survival but a deep plunge into the abyss of the garden's true nature. What had she awakened in this garden of blood and roses? What darkness was now at their door? The moment Laura laid eyes on the figure rising from the darkness, fear crawled up her spine, paralyzing her. Clara's grip felt fragile, trembling in her hold. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice trembling as much as her hands. The creature stepped closer, shadows swirling around its form like a gown woven from nightmares. What appeared to be a face was obscured, only two glowing eyes piercing through the shadows, drilling into Laura's soul. "I am the keeper of this garden," it intoned, voice flowing like honey mixed with poison. "And you have awakened my slumbering wrath." Laura's heart pounded like a war drum, threatening to drown out the creature's ominous words. This was a guardian, or perhaps a harbinger of chaos. The realization gripped her, sending ice through her veins. "We never meant to disturb you," she shouted, mustering every ounce of courage. "Let Clara go." The darkness twisted, tendrils shifting ominously as if considering her plea. "But she belongs to me now, as do you. It is your fear I cherish, your despair I feast upon." Clara's eyes shone with terror, a reflection of all the horror surrounding them. "Laura, don't listen. It's lying," she cried, but her voice was nearly drowned out by the rustling foliage, each leaf whispering dreadful secrets. Laura tugged at Clara's hand, but the tendrils withdrew, growing tighter. "You know this garden feeds where despair runs deep," the entity continued, its tone almost soothing, as if luring them into a trance. "Together you shall sink into shadows, and the garden will thrive." The air grew heavier, thick with the stench of decay, and the ground beneath them pulsed with an unholy heartbeat. Laura's breath quickened. Despair clawed at her mind, each beat of the garden's pulse reminding her of the losses she had endured. Fragments danced in her memory. Faces of loved ones, smiles turned to cries, the weight of guilt she buried daily. "No," she gasped, shaking her head violently. "You can't have us." The creature laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Then fight it, little girl. Show me your resolve." But know this, your bond with her is a fragile thread, and one I will gladly sever. As if to illustrate the threat, the shadows around Clara thickened, coiling tighter. Laura, I can't breathe, Clara gasped, panic setting in. Her eyes glimmered with the reflection of the glowing orbs, hovering like distant stars, and Laura felt her own hope begin to dim. Stay with me, Laura shouted, desperation cracking her voice. Remember the memories, the laughter, the love. It's more powerful than this darkness. Clara's eyes widened, the whisper of remembrance breaking through the heavy fog of fear. You're right, we've faced so much together. The strength in her voice began to falter the more the shadows engulfed her. Laura, it's too strong. No, Laura yelled back, gripping Clara's hand tighter, feeling the strength of their shared moments echo in her heart. We fight together. Instinctively, she reached for the luminous key buried in the soil. Its warmth surged a pulse through her fingertips, igniting a flicker of hope deep within. With this, we can push it back. The darkness recoiled, hissing a warning. You tread dangerous ground, child. You seek light, but what do you know of shadows? In that moment, she understood the key was not just an object. It was their memory, their strength, and perhaps the only weapon they had against unending despair. Laura plunged the key into the ground, calling forth the memories of laughter and light that danced around them. Get off her, she screamed, the key glowing brighter, illuminating the dark tendrils entangling Clara. Then, the garden erupted a wave of color and sound, battling against the darkness. Fear morphed into defiance, and in that precarious moment, everything hung in the balance. The shadows wailed, recoiling, but their grip was far from broken. What would it take to truly banish the darkness? The ground trembled violently, the silhouette looming larger with a rage that shook the soil beneath their feet. You think you have the strength to defy me? It boomed, resonating like thunder in her bones. Laura felt the warmth from the key sing in her veins, a reminder that this fight was not hers alone. Clara's voice, soft but determined, broke through, urging her on. Together, Laura. We have to do this together. But as shadows flickered against Clara, floodlights of malevolence sought to consume them both, leaving Laura to wonder, was all this power enough to defeat a darkness that thrived on their deepest fears? The tendrils surged once more, snaking around her legs, pulling her back toward the maw of despair. Would they truly emerge from this garden? Fight, she screamed, determination roaring in her chest. But was it enough? The creature's laughter echoed through the garden, mixing with the groan of the earth. And what was that? A rumble beneath her feet, something more than shadows turned dark. Face me and learn what true fear is. As a surge of cold air enveloped them, Laura's world shimmered and faded, replaced by a darkness she couldn't comprehend. What hidden truths lingered where light no longer reached? What horror awaited them on the other side of fear? In that suffocating darkness, Laura felt the weight of every decision, every moment spent tangled in the garden's thrall. Shadows clawed at her mind, dragging her toward despair. But somewhere, beneath the fear, the memory of Clara burned bright, of laughter shared, of courage found in dark times. That flicker anchored her. Together, she shouted, breaking through the silence. She clutched the key tight, the pulse of its power resonating with her heartbeat. We won't be just shadows. We choose to fight. With every ounce of her being, she drove the key into the ground again. The air crackled with energy, reverberating against the darkness, challenging the entity's hold. Your darkness is fed by our fear. But we have hope. We have love. The ground trembled, responding to her defiance, vines retreating against the surge of brilliance emanating from the key. Across from her, Clara began to breathe easier, the tendrils losing their grip. Remember, the memories, Laura, they're stronger than any darkness. Images flooded Laura's mind. Smiles, embraces, friendships forged in simple moments. The garden, for all its horror, could not extinguish the warmth of those memories. You'll not claim us, she bellowed. Every flower here, every shadow, you will not take our light. The figure looming before them recoiled, its laughter shifting to a deep, anguished growl as the light burst forth, driving back the encroaching dark. The shadows writhed in agony, the roses curling their petals in retreat. The garden was responding, but could it break the entity's hold entirely? Together, Laura and Clara cried out, hands tightly entwined, energy linking their spirits. They leaned into the light, pushing through the despair that threatened to swallow them. Branches splintered, and the ground shook as the shadows screamed. Hope surged, revealing a path among the chaos, an escape beneath the tendrils of darkness. This way, Clara urged, finally breaking free as the darkness faltered. They ran through the pulsing thorns, following the whirling light. The whispers transformed, no longer pleading but rejoicing, echoes of the lost souls rising with them. For the first time in ages, they felt strength, the sheer will of so many united in one luminous heartbeat. Then, as they reached the garden's edge, Evangeline's voice pierced through, filled with rage. You've awakened more than you know. You think you have one? You are but a blip in the shadows. But Laura turned defiantly. We are light. We carry the memories of those you've taken, and we will not let you harm anyone else. With that, they pushed forward, breaking through the veil of darkness. The garden trembled, the blood-red roses wilting, petals falling like tears. The key pulsed with pure energy as the darkness lurched one last time, then folded inward, unable to withstand the combined power of love and hope. Laura and Clara burst through the barrier, collapsing onto the cool grass outside the garden's threshold. The cursed roses twisted and shriveled behind them, their haunting whispers silenced. The air felt light, freed from the burden of despair as the first rays of dawn broke over Maplewood Hollow, illuminating the remnants of Evangeline's garden. The two girls lay panting, clutching each other tightly. We did it, Clara breathed, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Yes, we did, Laura murmured, tears of joy mingling with fear on her cheeks. But we'll always have to be careful. Together, they rose to their feet, the shadows of the previous night fading like a bad dream. They turned back one last time to look at the remnants, knowing they had not only reclaimed their lives but honored the spirits of the 7 maids once lost to that garden, a garden that would never again feast on their fear. With heavy hearts, but hearts filled with newfound courage, they walked away, a united front against whatever may come next. Maplewood Hollow felt different, a sort of rebirth. Quiet laughter floated around them as they made their way home, leaving behind the echoes of sorrow. But the promise of the garden lingered. Reminder of their strength, a flicker of courage amid the shadows. And they both knew together they could face anything. As Laura looked back, she whispered, never again. Now it's your turn to help. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will mesmerize you. Make sure to smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, because your support means everything. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know how important it is to support the channel. Make every click count.